You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I never loved another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. You gotta know, I'm feeling love. You gotta know, I'm feeling love. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I'll never love another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. I might as well be in our garden. I said a smell in the air is a dripping rose. Give me the wine for me. Another soul to be my warden. Of anything there that's made of gold. A physical kiss is nothing without it. And you close your eyes to see what it's done. The body that lies is built up on looking. It's all that remains before it's begun. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I'll never love another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I'll never love another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. A heart will swell before it's hardened. With the flick of the hair, it can make you old. Another hole to dig my soul in. I'll leave anything bare that keeps me sold. A physical kiss is nothing without it. And you close your eyes to see what it's done. The body that lies is built up on looking. Is all that remains before it's begun. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I'll never love another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, made it gold. I'll never love another one, another you. It's gotta be love, I said it. You gotta know, I'm feeling love, See, I wanna go outside. Stimulation amplifies, you know. You need to stay behind and let me walk where the transit lights are. Tremors down my spine. Felt it for the 100th time when I'm trapped and I cannot fly and you don't own me. Take me over. Take me tonight. Dream no more and leave it all behind. Take me over. Take me tonight. Dream no more and leave it all behind. Dream no more and leave it all behind. Take me home. 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 See, I wanna go outside. Guess I got to feel alive and I don't wanna live this fight and I'll let me home to where the transit lines are. Passions are confined. Feel like this heart ain't mine. Don't need to walk the line. I'll break this strand aside. I feel closer. I feel closer now. And I am gonna break home. Chase the moment. Take me over now. Take me over. Take me tonight. Dream no more and leave it all behind. Take me over. Take me tonight. Dream no more and leave it all behind. baby, why'd you only call me when you're high?
We would like to welcome you all here today to the celebration of life for Jackson Winter. Before we get started, can you please just take a moment to make sure that your mobile phone is switched off or in the silent mode? That's very respectful for the family. Now, there are exit doors to the right and to the left if you feel that during this service you need a little bit of a break. So please use those exit doors if you need to. If you have any questions at all, Kylie down there, just go straight to her, and she's absolutely wonderful and she will help you with any difficulties you have. Jeff, Natalie and Charlie would like to thank everyone for their patience and understanding in respect to the numbers here present today. They would also like to take a moment to thank Nowra High School for opening up and taking the overflow of students in both Jackson's and Charlie's year. And also, they would like to thank the many groups gathering together across the world to celebrate together Jack's life today. The family would also like to thank the team at HMAS Creswell for opening their doors, opening their hearts, and allowing us to be here together in this most beautiful place. You really couldn't get a better place and a better day for gathering. Now, I'm sure you all have an order of service. If you note, that little quote at the start of the order of service was actually written by Jackson on the passing of a great friend, and it seems such fitting words for us here today. By the sounds of it, he certainly crammed in every second he possibly could.
Good morning, everyone. In my classroom every morning, to get the day going on a positive note, we read a story together. So today I'd like to read you a story about a boy called Jack. Jack was like every other boy. He looked like a boy, he smelled like a boy, he spoke like a boy. But even from a young age, teachers all around him realised that Jack was no ordinary boy. He possessed qualities that made him see the good in all people and help someone out when they needed it. Whether it was just with their work or just by giving you that beautiful smile of his that would warm your heart when you needed it most. He could make you laugh at a moment's notice through his antics or by something he said. Most of all, Jack knew from an early age that life was special and to make the most of it. Jack was the boy that every teacher wanted in their class. In kindergarten, a 5-year-old Jack once slipped into the school's slimy frog pond during a lesson, much to his young teacher's horror. His teacher said that with his resilient nature, he brushed himself off and was just happy to get on with his day, although his trousers were really wet and they actually needed changing. Upon returning to school the next day, Jack announced to the class for news that he had tadpoles in his pocket. That's why he fell into the pond. His classmates and teacher laughed. Jack was really good at making people laugh, especially his teachers. Jack was a bright and intelligent young boy and always keen to help a fellow student when they were struggling with something. According to his Year 2 teacher, he often helped the Year 3 students in his 2-3 composite class with their reading, to which his teacher would just sit back and smile. Jack was good at helping people and did it without a thought for consequences or a worry what people would think about him. This was very true in Year 1, when another child in Jack's class asked for help in spelling some other kid's name. Jack happily obliged and even helped the poor speller carve the requested name into a tree when it was apparent to Jack that this kid also had poor penmanship when carving names. Needless to say, it was Jack that got busted by a teacher and into a bit of trouble. A note home to Mum and Dad with a warning of suspension. Jack was mortified. He was only trying to help. In his later years in primary schooling, Jack really seemed to come out of his shell a bit more, enjoying school immensely. Perhaps, though, the highlight was the terrific Year 4 class he had, where he had a teacher with a good sense of humour and a teaching style that was a little different to the rest. Mrs. Woodgate was her name, and making Year 4 fun was her game. They had Toes-Free Tuesday, where socks and shoes were optional in the classroom while learning. They had a music challenge where you had to sit completely still with no bopping, tapping or smiling when the likes of Crazy Frog or some other equally catchy song played. They read The Twits and Witches by the Roald Dahl and took turns in doing voices of characters. And they had challenge work for those that finished work quickly, involved things like building monuments or whatever you fancy really, out of Lego, matchsticks, plasticine, straws or a combination of the lot. No surprises here, but Jack had an aviation theme going. Helicopters, jets, heli-jet combos, and of course hangars to house them all in. Jack and Mrs. Woodgate hit it off like wildfire, and there were many times in the years later he made it known to her that she was the best teacher he ever had. Now by this time, at the grand old age of 10, Jack had become somewhat of a little prankster. But Mrs. Woodgate had seen this type of before and was onto his pranks most of the time. There was the time he put 3 thumbtacks pointy side up on her chair and under her jumper, and only when she moved her jumper at recess, the tacks fell to the floor did she notice. She returned the favour. She put 3 thumbtacks on Jack's chair at recess with a little post-it note that said, "Nice try," accompanied by a winky face. Upon returning to his chair after recess, she watched his face and his head turned and looked at her with one of the biggest, cheekiest Jack grins you'd ever seen. Bingo. Woodgate 1, Winter 0. 4W in 2013 had some awesome times. Great bunches of kids with great personalities, Jack leading the way. He was affectionately known to everyone as Jack Jack from The Incredibles, a name given to him on the first day of the school year when it was realised that there were 2 Jacks in the class. Jack Jack stated that he was okay with being called whatever name his teacher liked, as long as it wasn't his brother's name, as he found it so annoying being called Charlie by mistake from other teachers. Mrs. Woodgate made a mental note of that. She's got a good memory. Many months later, whilst working one morning, Jack thought he might let his cheekiness shine once more, and in the midst of a somewhat noisy classroom, he let out a, "Hey Sam, can I go to the toilet please?" with a very cheeky grin. The class, who had no other Sam but Mrs. Woodgate, went silent. Like pin drop silent. Mrs. Woodgate and her great memory shot the cheeky monkey a huge smile and said, "Of course you can, Charlie." Death stares followed from Jack, not that he'd actually been called Charlie, but because Mrs. Woodgate had got him a beauty again. During years 5 and 6, Jack's cheeky prankster nature knew no bounds. There are rumours that he and another student devoured one of their teacher's chocolate stashes that they found. There's a recount of him accidentally kicking balls and throwing a hat onto the roof just to see if he could. And then there was the incident with the mouse, the classic prank in year 6 whereby he and a few mates, who will remain nameless, but many are here today, attached a wireless mouse to their teacher's keyboard. And whilst she was going insane trying to work out why the screen kept changing and the arrow seemed to have a mind of its own, the few little conspirators in the room chuckled as they were in total control of her computer via the mouse hidden on their desk. I'm not sure who was the true mastermind in the evil plan, but something tells me Jack had a hand in it somehow. Jack was an incredibly kind kid. He was a great friend, always looking out for others, helping others, including others in games, and annoying others. Not in a hurtful way, of course, just in a Jack way. Jack is memorable. Everyone I spoke to remembers him and had nothing but kind words to say. This story of Jack could go on forever, as he was one of those kids who shone as bright as they could for as long as they could, touching the lives of so many. I'm sure everyone here could easily write a story about the friendship and the memories they have of Jack, whether they knew him for 5 minutes or their whole lives. Although I did see him when he was older, to me Jack will always be a kind, caring and considerate 10-year-old with an infectious laugh and the cheekiest of cheeky grins that really did make me smile. I miss you, Jack, but I'm so pleased you got put into 4W all those years ago. And I'm proud of you of the person you became and the way you lived your life. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Catherine Cook, and I was Jackson's maths teacher at Nowra High School for years 11 and 12, where he studied 4 units of maths out of his full 10 units. His other subjects included physics, economics, and English. I think it's fair to say he was a maths science nerd, and I also think it's fair to say that he was a curious, inquisitive, and charismatic learner who, whilst not the most studious of students, certainly brought a positive presence and a whole lot of pizzazz into the classroom. Whilst I've been reflecting on what to say today, I came to the realisation that any anecdote or roasting I could talk about is not only about Jackson, but always involves a group of people, because Jackson was always doing something with someone and having a great time doing it. So I'll do my best to share just a few of the key memories I have, and Mr. Taggs, Mr. Evans, and other staff members have about Jackson in his final years of high school. Now, I fully know and give great recognition and respect to the young people who have responded with such kindness, maturity and support in the last fortnight to the Winter family. However, I would like for you to know that they weren't always this mature. Year 12 camp. In fact, I think it's reasonable to state that they were an absolute bunch of larrikins in the class of 2021, and also in the years before and after. I want to share with you some of the classroom moments that occurred when we had this group of young people in the building, fully acknowledging that James and Ari will do a better job in their speeches after me. Most lessons across any school, I imagine, begin with teachers trying to wrangle kids into some sort of calmness and focus. Seniors are no different. In fact, they're harder to shut down often because their conversation's really interesting and you want to join in. When we finally got sorted for our maths lessons, we would typically begin with a flashback to the previous lesson, often in the form of a past HSC multiple choice question. Jackson would invariably jump in immediately and state his response as A, B, C or D. When I asked for mathematical reasoning to support his answer, not only was it not forthcoming, others would chime in with their oppositional answers, and that was it, game on. Everyone had a stake. I would normally then plead with them to work out the actual answer using, reasoning, logic, calculations, mathematical concepts, anything but sheer luck. We would eventually work out the answer, and whoever guessed it initially would claim glory in this crazy godlike status of mathematical prowess and knowledge. I do need to add that on many, many occasions, Ari had this uncanny ability to guess the right answer. So whenever anyone else got it, it was a big moment. I would roll my eyes and question what the hell I was doing there, and then we might just move on to learning some new content so we could repeat the shenanigans next lesson. I want you all to know today, as my witnesses, that I completely blame Jacko for the game, even though many others participated. He was definitely the ringleader. At the time, I was often incredulous. Now I laugh about it a lot. Good times. One of the best moments for Jacko in his maths career was when he beat Ari in an HSC assessment task. One day in term 2 of year 12, he rocked up to class, immediately asking if I'd marked the task, because he was always super keen and super competitive about marks. I kind of nodded at him and said he'd be really happy with his mark. And he looked at me and said, "How happy?" And I said, "Very, very, very happy." And he went, "Did I beat Ari?" And I just stared at him and nodded. It was one of those moments I can still clearly visualise. His eyes lit up, he let out great whooping noises and demanded to see the paper to see the difference in marks. Now, anyone who knows Ari Lanstra knows what a feat it is to beat him, so there was a legitimately great cause for celebrating Jacko's results. That one's a nice memory. Now, most high school classrooms are rife with banter. In case you were unaware of its official meaning, the definition of banter in the Urban Dictionary states, the magnificent art of using wordplay, opinions, exaggeration, irony, sarcasm, and other comedic themes to playfully make fun of and laugh at your friends. Let me tell you that if you look up the word banter in certain versions of the dictionary, you will find a picture of Jackson Winter. Legit, because he epitomised the term and engaged in it so well across all facets of his life, as I know you will hear today. He, along with his colleagues in physics and Mr. Evans, engaged in continual banter about experiences surrounding the Tamar Valley. Lots of inside jokes there, apparently, and when I tried to get more details, both the kids and Mr. Evans just broke into crazy grins and spurted out stories that I couldn't keep up with. Maybe you need to chat with them later. Jackson was also part of the Lads of Economics, plus Kira, with Mr. Tags, where banter flew around the room in epic proportions. When I asked for a story that we could understand, he told me that they made nicknames based on Donkey Kong, where they switched the first letter from the two words Donkey Kong with the first letter of their first and last names. So Ben Tags, the king, teacher of economics, would be Bonky Tong, and Jackson Winter would have been referred to as Jonky Wong. Sorry. Tags also mentioned prank exam starting times, contributions to classroom rearrangements, particularly the Chamber of James, and various other spectacles. He wanted me to say that Jacko's positivity and sense of humour made every lesson a lot of fun, and he was highly valued by his peers and teacher alike. Ditto Tags. One of Jackson's many passions was playing tennis, and it made him late to my class a lot in Year 12. However, Mr. Gardner told me a lovely story about Jacko representing the school against Ulladulla, along with several teammates, and having to face a bunch of Year 7 kids who were clearly petrified about playing senior opponents. Jacko was super charming about playing the young kids, displaying great sportsmanship and laughing and joking with the boys, trying to put them at ease, clearly demonstrating his kind nature. This was just one of the many stories I could have sourced about Jacko. In closing, I would like to repeat a phrase that I used in Jackson's report comment at the end of Year 12, where I stated that it had been my privilege to work with him over the past 2 years. It's been my privilege to speak here today, representing Nowra High School, and share some of our memories of Jackson. It is after events such as these that people engage in some reflection, and it came to me a few days after the accident that whilst parents and teachers are certainly in an influential position, we cannot protect our young people. We cannot protect you. It's a stark and a frightening realisation. So where does that leave us? What we can do, to the best of our ability, is prepare you. Prepare you to face life's challenges and support you to deal with life's challenges. And in that reciprocal relationship that we build with our kids and our students, we might just need to lean on you sometimes too, especially at times like this. I would like to say to Charlie, as he has one term before he undertakes his final exams and finishes his time at Nowra High, that we as a school community will do our very best to support you, to help you through this time now and in the future, down the track, when you might be having a bad day or a horrendous week, or you're just not feeling it. I speak for Mr. Kingsley, our principal, and Mr. McGrath, your year advisor, when I state that we will stand with you, we will not forget your brother, and we will remember him with you. I can honestly say that I'm a better teacher because of Jackson. Nowra High is a better place for him having been there, and that all of us who are here today or watching from a different venue are the better for knowing Jackson. We will remember him. Thank you.
When I first started to think about writing the impossible task of summing up the life of Jackson in one short speech, it was overwhelming. It seemed impossible. A unique life so full of excitement, enthusiasm, laughter, and achievement. Initially, I found myself writing paragraph after paragraph, struggling to find a start or end point. And then I realised it doesn't just seem it. It really is an impossible task. Known by everyone in such a unique way, it's impossible to even come close to with words. I'm honoured to have been asked to speak here today and recall some of the memorable moments we had together as mates. I began to write this speech with no intentions of being positive, humorous or fun, but rather to remember and express the life of Jackson in the most honest and real way that I can. Luckily, they are all byproducts when you look back on the inspirational, full-on, crazy, jam-packed, and unique life that he lived every single day. His spontaneity was unlike anyone's I've seen before. Like the time he decided he wanted a Subaru Outback, the best car on the market, to replace his i30, which sat a bit too low to the ground for a 5-seater car with 8 people in it for his liking. Only a couple days into wanting a new car, he decided on the Outback and was browsing them on Facebook Marketplace in an economics class. That's when he struck the deal of his life. The cheapest second-hand Outback on the market. He boasted his find, quoting the seller's reasoning for selling the car. A wife, straight following a divorce, desperate to get rid of the car before her ex-husband got home. All he had to do to get his dream car is pay the poor lady the asking price and she would get it shipped to him in the coming days. Luckily, it was quickly picked up by literally everyone else in the room that the car, which I would like to stress was half the price of anything like it on the market, was a scam. He always lived with this intensely optimistic attitude though, as shown by the trust that he placed in this now apparent single lady on Facebook Marketplace. Whether it be his career, his sporting endeavours, and all the way down to the smaller things like the strength of duct tape, his car's capabilities, his bush mechanics abilities, his ability to get away with playing video games in class even after being called out 20 times in the last 20 minutes, and his ability to curve a soccer ball into the side of a building. Anyway, to get back on track, This car scammer didn't stop him, of course. With a lot more determination, he had his Outback from a legitimate seller within a very short amount of time. Determination was actually a really huge part of Jackson's life. Committed to everything he wanted to do, whether it be sport, schooling, or his future ambitions, he lived his life with an indescribable urgency to succeed. And this wasn't just a mindset that he took into the important stuff in life. It was a lifestyle for him. The same way he'd treat getting into ADFA or succeeding in exams, he'd also take into his Happy Wheels world record attempts, handball at recess or lunch, Rubik's Cube speeds, or keeping Buffy from getting to class by trapping him in the corner. No matter what the scenario, he never stopped until he achieved what he wanted to achieve. On a serious note, I want to share a classic example of the never give up lifestyle that he used to live, to me at least, which was perfectly highlighted in a story that Natalie posted on Facebook about a triathlon he competed in way back in 2018. It was a swim, bike and run triathlon where the runner was out stuck in another state, unable to compete. It's only a short story that Natalie posted, so I want to share it with you all because it just encompasses who Jackson was as a person perfectly and the desire he had to achieve anything he set his mind to constantly. The triathlon began. Jackson should have knocked over the bike ride in good time, as it's shorter than his daily ride to school. We watch and wait. The first riders finish their stint. No Jacko. The little kids begin riding past. No Jacko. After a bit of a wait, we spot him running, carrying his bike with him. He nailed the first 5 kilometres of the ride, and then one of his bike pedals had fallen off. Instead of quitting there and then, he jumped off his bike and ran with it for the remaining 2 kilometres. As much as I like to take the piss out of both of my boys, I have to say that I'm super proud of them. Jackson has stepped up and looked after me so much as of late, hence why I've been so unstressed. He has been my rock. He showed so much courage in running so far with his bike when he could have just sat by the side of the road and given up. Yet he got up and kept going for his team. I'm so proud of my boys. I read this story following Jackson's passing and felt such a mix of emotions. This is just the kind of person that Jackson was, a competitor in everything that he did, no matter the scale or importance. Although undoubtedly naturally gifted in so many aspects of his life, he never settled for mediocrity. He was constantly striving for excellence in every aspect of his life, as proven by his achievements. He maintained this mindset right until the end. He always viewed life the way that he wanted to, and that was it. No one could get in the way of it. If he wanted to get somewhere, he just worked hard and always made it in the end. His strong views were one of the only things that could cause potential issues, though. If Jacko had a view, it was near impossible to shake it. It was like talking to a brick wall. He believed what he believed, and that was it. All of his views were public. There weren't many views that he had on a topic that he wasn't afraid to share. From political views, to views around females' attractiveness, to views on drugs, smoking, and alcohol, to views on any little school drama. One of the memories I have of this was at Year 12 camp, where we copped over 200 millimetres of rain in 2 days, which basically ruined the go-ahead of over half of the planned outdoor activities. To make light of this situation, on the final night, I decided to con a few of the boys, being Jacko included, to use the big lawn hill in front of our cabins as a slip and slide. Before we knew it, probably a lot to do with Jackson's persuading abilities, a massive group of probably 30 of us were sliding down this massive hill. Before we could stop to think, the camp owner came marching out, gave us the spray of our lives, and forced us to sit outside in the rain while we got lectured by teachers on how we had just ruined the lawn. None of us had a single regret, yet we were sat in absolute silence. That is, of course, except for Jacko. He felt the need to let the teacher know that he believed we had done no damage to the property and are unfairly sat outside against our human rights, and kindly refused to go to the owner in the morning to apologise. That's just the person he was. If there was a situation where everyone was too nervous to share their view, he would be the first to speak up. In saying this, Jackson was also very emotionally aware. He never liked sharing his own emotions or hardships with a lot of people. He only ever properly opened up emotionally to the people he was closest to. With him being the positive people pleaser he was, I can only assume that he just knew who mattered and cared most in life, and didn't want to pass his pain on to anyone who it wasn't relevant to. To me, this sums up his deeper character. Yes, at surface level, he was a spontaneous, funny, and very outgoing seeming guy. But deeper down, he fought his own battles, on his own where he could, or with the help of his closest friends where he needed. He never, particularly in the last couple of years in his life, liked to spread any negativity to anyone around him, a trait of his that I respected more than any other. This is not to say that he would back out of an argument to preserve a relationship, though. As well as emotionally, he was also very socially aware and knew where the limits to his discussions were. And when it came down to it, he would never let the expression of his strong views get out of hand. But with the group we had in school, he knew he could push the boundaries right until the very edge. He would often have arguments, probably most notably with me, due to both of our stubborn and strong views. But I always knew with Jackson, it would have to be me that shakes my frustration at the end of the day. It was never him. He would always show up the next week with a blank slate view of everyone he cared about, as if nothing had happened. It was just the person he was. Where he wanted it to, with a bit of time, of course, forgiveness seemed to come naturally to him. I could go on for hours and hours about the life of Jackson. Whenever I reflect back on the memories we've had together, it almost always brings a smile to my face. It has been one of the most comforting things for me, knowing that looking back, out of anyone that I've met, he was the one who lived his life to the absolute fullest every day. Jackson's character is one I'll never forget, which constantly impacted, influenced, and challenged the lives of all of those around him in the most positive of ways. As we walk out or sign off today, I hope that we can all share this immense comfort amongst the pain, knowing that the mate we've just lost will forever hold a massive place in our hearts and memories. Fly high, Jacko. You will never be forgotten.
While I would love to jump right into our stories, I think a little background might help everyone out. Aurora College is an online selective school for students who live in rural and remote areas who might not have access to higher level education. In basic terms, Aurora was meant for some of the smartest students across New South Wales. And while this may have been the case, we continuously attempted to prove this wrong. Somehow, whenever the group was brought together from across the state, we always managed to walk away with a new story or two, stories that were known to all due to just how stupid they all were. While I wasn't around to see the first year of Aurora, Jacko and I made up for that very quickly. While I didn't know anyone, Jacko took me under his wing. The two of us quickly became known as a trouble-causing duo, spurring many of the stories that we're yet to tell. However, out of all these stories, there is one much more infamous than the rest, one that I'm sure all of Aurora will never forget. I'm going to tell you about the orange juice incident. It was a regular camp breakfast, lining up for slightly warm bread trying to pass as toast and a drink to join it. As was typical, Jacko and I were standing there, goofing off for entertainment of the others. As we went to grab a drink, we noticed that orange juice was an option. These weren't typical orange juice poppers, however, but they were small plastic cups like what you'd find on an airline. After finishing breakfast, we found that these cups could easily be stacked up. This spurred the start of a fantastic idea. Throughout the rest of the day, we collected any orange juice we could find and drank it. We had a small gang of 4 or 5 of us, with Jacko and myself leading, all ingesting as much orange juice as possible. The starting leg of this adventure was especially useful, as the brain teaser event that we had attended, you guessed it, had orange juice as a drink option. We slowly accrued a stack of empty orange juice poppers on our table, a trophy for all to see. In true Aurora fashion, we made ourselves known to both students and staff. While some staff, such as Mrs. Elliott, attempted to warn us about possible sugar crashes late that night, we powered on. This was only the start of a 3-day orange juice fiasco. The next day, we had one objective: drink as much orange juice as possible. Breakfast became a hoarding fest, with Jacko grabbing as many orange juice cups as his folded-up jumper could carry. Our movement began to create traction, with others bringing us cups of orange juice to support our cause. This was the day we extended our cup stack, getting close to 70 cups between our group. While we continued to drink our juice, some of the staff members were becoming concerned of our efforts and decided to ban our group from juice altogether. This concern may have been sparked by the research into the effects of vitamin C overdoses, but we couldn't be sure. One important fact we did learn, however, was that an excessive amount of vitamin C will induce pancreatic cancer, which is important later on. While normally something like this would stop our plans, the Aurora students had a different idea. The entire year group began to smuggle juice for us, Jacko and I receiving donations from whoever could get their hands on orange juice. After this mass smuggling, we crammed it into any spare bag space we had and headed into ANSTO, Australia's nuclear reactor. This location was especially important due to the work they do there with specialised medications. Our group toured with a guide, learning about all the applications of the medicines being created. There was one medicine, however, that stood out. The tour guide listed them out, concluding with a medicine to mediate pancreatic cancer. In regular teenage male fashion, the two of us burst out laughing in the middle of this facility. The tour guide was stunned as to why a group of 3 boys at the back of the group had suddenly burst into laughter, while our teacher attempted to explain that it was due to our interesting objective. On the final morning, there was only one thing left to do. We needed to reach 100 juice cups. We arrived at breakfast at an ungodly hour of the morning, as was tradition with Aurora buses leaving while it was still dark. At this point, everyone knew what we were up to. Jacko, Josh and myself walked in and started to count how many cups we needed to complete our stack. We drank them and quickly took them back to our room. We stacked them up and began to admire them. We worshipped our work and all made sure to take photos holding the pile of cups. However, the best was yet to come. We knew that there was one staff member in particular that was completely opposed to our noble cause. We strolled down to the breakfast hall, cups in hand, to show off our work to Mrs. Clough. The look on her face was priceless when she spotted the stack, and she absolutely refused to take our photo with it. Luckily, another staff member jumped at the opportunity, finishing off one of the happiest and well-known memories that I share with Jacko. The last time that I got to spend an extended period of time with Jacko was our camping trip with a few guys from Aurora in Year 11, deciding to spend a few nights in the middle of nowhere out near Mount Kosciuszko. The first thing I remember as soon as we arrived was hearing Jacko complain about the price of fuel, having driven his precious Outback through the windy bends of the mountain. If only we could have those fuel prices back. Anyway, within the first few hours, we decided that a fire would be a good idea. Being the intelligent people we were, we didn't feel like carrying any fallen branches we could find. Instead, Jacko folded down his back seat and the car became a dumping ground for any fallen sticks and logs we could manage to lift. To this day, I think there would still be remnants of that trip stuck in the carpet of the boot. The highlight of that trip was our climb of Mount Kosciuszko. Jacko let his athleticism shine while leaving us all in the dust. It was a race up that hill for him, counting the group's overtakes and being disappointed whenever we needed to stop for a break. After finally reaching the top, we stared out over the world, nearly being on top of it. I only say nearly because we weren't quite as high as we could be. In only what I could call true Aurora fashion, we handed a phone to some nearby tourists to take a photo before stacking all 5 of us on top of the highest point in Australia. I look back at that photo only a few days ago, and I remembered the pure bliss and happiness we all felt in that moment. Aurora was an opportunity like no other, and I, as the others, are also very appreciative of that opportunity. We all took full advantage, especially Jacko. We made friendships that will last lifetimes, and Jacko will live on in the memory of all of us, I'm sure.
As many of you know what Jacko was like, there was absolutely no shortage of mischief and misbehaviour. Despite many of you thinking I was a mature one of the group, a number of the stupid things we actually did were my idea, but I just didn't have the balls to do it, which is where Jackson came in with his superhero confidence. Starting off with our Aurora gang in Nowra, having our own private room in the library meant we were able to share a quiet and personal workspace, which really benefited our gaming careers. Whether we're playing Happy Wheels, Halo, School Bus License 3, The Binding of Isaac, Marble Blast, Tanks, Gravity Run, Minecraft, Penguins Arena, Geometry Dash, yeah, we played a lot. No matter the time or the lesson we were supposed to be listening to, we were always doing everything except for schoolwork. One particularly fond memory I have is one time we were playing Cops and Robbers in Halo, and Devlin needed to hide in-game for Jackson to chase him in one of these cars with machine guns mounted on the back with the aim of flattening him. And so Jackson started counting to 10 in his typical Jackson voice, 1, 2, 3, which was so loud that it penetrated the deliberately closed windows and door, down 2 levels, and to Miss Suitors, who heard the noise and came up with the intent of busting us. However, again, in typical Jackson fashion, she was met with extreme backchat, with Jackson claiming he was doing maths and teaching Devlin how to count to 10. As a side note, we turned our computers with the backs facing the window so you couldn't see what we were doing, and we were exceptional at tabbing off our games onto the class we were not participating in. And so, back to the incident. There was a long and hard battle over what we were actually doing, which I don't believe ever saw a proper conclusion, as Jackson was never one to admit defeat. But yeah. Another great memory I have, which believe it or not was not related to gaming, but we got a wireless mouse and plugged it into one of the computers in the computer lab below, which had the screen facing us just so we could see what we were doing. And so we all had turns of screwing around with the mouse, closing tabs, shutting down the computer, just causing mayhem to whoever was using the computer at the time, which ended in one victim exclaiming, "Is someone on my account?" And looking in disbelief around the library as if she was going to see what was actually going on. Safe to say, it was a really fun time, but very sorry to whoever was on the tail end of our mischief. Moving on to our first Aurora School camp in Sydney, we carried our boisterous and mischievous attitudes, which proved to be somewhat destructive. This particular incident I had in mind was just the first night in, and Jackson had grabbed someone's tennis ball and was throwing it into the toilet cubicle that we had in our little cabin while Devlin stood in there watching it happen. Another Jackson trait is he is very persistent, so on the first try he threw it into the cubicle and he obviously missed as it bounced back out the bottom. So then he picked it up a second time and threw it into the cubicle, and again it bounced out underneath the door. And so on the third attempt he threw it in over the top and we heard a little splash, and Devlin exclaimed that he finally landed the shot. And so the chaos started to unfold. I poked my head in to check out the tennis ball in the toilet and genuinely went to press the flush button, but Jonah stopped me, which I am eternally grateful for due to what happened next. But then Jackson said he was going to grab Devlin's pillowcase to retrieve the ball. So then, out of fear, Devlin stepped up and did the work for me as we all watched the ball swirl around in the bowl as it filled up with water. And when it all settled, the ball was gone. So, very quickly, we noticed Jonah was loaded with snacks. Hold on. Missed something. Oh, the ball was gone. At this point, we were already in hysterics, and Devlin probably a bit relieved that the ball was gone and his pillowcase was safe. And so we just decided to flush the toilet again, because why not? And the toilet completely filled up with water just below the seat, and then slowly drained out fully until the bowl was absolutely dry, and it did this little burp sound as the last of the water left the bowl. Now, we knew the toilet was definitely blocked and had to improvise for our personal hygiene arrangements with a shower as the next best thing. Fast forward a day or two, we were in the middle of our single hour of pool time when one angry teacher came and grabbed our cabin group out of the pool to investigate our toilet system, as we had been proudly spreading the news of what we'd done. Many stern conversations later, and Devlin receiving a "you're skating on thin ice." That's why I'm thankful Jonah stopped me, because I'd be in Devlin's position. But it was later revealed that the tennis ball had become stuck a few metres into the toilet line because he kept flushing it because it made funny noises. Since this section of the pipe was buried beneath a concrete floor, the floor had to be partially ripped up and the actual section of the pipe removed, which had the tennis ball lodged in it. And I believe this was thousands of dollars of damage. But even before all this had happened, our room was filthy with chips and cheese all over the walls and floor. I'll explain. So, very quickly, we noticed Jonah was loaded with snacks, mainly dippets and shapes, and rather than consuming them like their intended purpose, Jackson thought it'd be funny to throw them at everyone. Now, since Jackson went on to be a state-level javelin and discus thrower, he had a pretty good arm on him. So, whenever Jackson threw them at someone and missed, the pack would usually just explode on contact with the bricks, leaving cheese splatters and biscuit crumbs everywhere and all over our beds too. So, when we were already getting busted for the toilet incident, we got in even more trouble for the state of our room. This prompted the leaders to split up our group, with Jackson and a few other boys put in next door's cabin. Next door was still too close. And just as it happened, someone had a spray can of deodorant and I had around 20 rubber bands in my bag, so we wrapped the bands around the can to hold down the spray button and went next door and threw it in the Jackson's room to smoke bomb him. Sadly, the bands got knocked loose and they were only partially gassed, but I want to highlight this is before we were all well educated about asthma. However, no one was hurt and their room smelt really good. Again, for little reason, as with our other stunts, someone had stashed some butter after a meal and rubbed it all over Jackson's cabin's door handle, as well as using my roll-on deodorant and rolling it all around the door too. This genuinely pissed Jackson off, but luckily the situation was mostly controlled by just keeping our doors locked at night time so they didn't kill us. Taking a jump to our Year 12 Extension 2 maths class, where we're all now out of Aurora, we were still just as childish as our younger selves, Jackson in particular. Every single lesson we had, we would always complain about how hard or how stupid the content was, and Jacko would always say, "Oh yeah, I'll just take the L on that in the HSC," casually acting like it was just going to be a couple marks he's losing out on. Except he said that every week, which really left me questioning if he actually knew how to do any of it. But he pulled through and got the mark he needed, just. I still remember the hour before our Extension 2 HSC exam, and we were sitting in our old maths classroom talking crap and joking about how little we knew. And then one of us decided it'd be a great idea to graffiti our names on the wall in permanent marker. And so, Jacko led the pack and wrote in huge letters across the front of the classroom, "Jacko was here," with a $ for the S and spelt H-E-A-R, as in how you hear with your ears. Of course, we didn't feel too bad about adding our names afterwards because we could very easily point the finger at Jackson. After all, his name was on the wall and no amount of arguing would refute that evidence. But now, working back at Narra High, I still have been seeing all the marks left by Jackson, particularly the graffiti and general other damage, which always brings up very fond memories whenever I see what's still there. It's safe to say there were so many other stupid incidents like this, which looking back on could have definitely been handled differently. But I don't have any regrets now moving forward, knowing I got to do some of the funniest things of my life with my dearest friend Jackson. Although I did get a bit sick of how much he boasted about Subaru Outbacks and his constant complaints of fuel prices. On a more serious note, however, Jackson was always there with me through primary and high school, the good and the bad, the laughs and the tears, and having only talked to him a few weeks ago, I still can't comprehend that I'll never get to see his cheeky smile or talk to him again, and that's a sadness I'll carry throughout my life, but I'll always carry his personality, memories, and heart with mine.
I've been looking back on memories of Jackson over these past couple of days. I'm sure all of us here have. And one thing that stands out to me is I remember clearly, and I think I always will, his laugh. It was just this sound that you couldn't replicate by any other means, and it really showed how much Jackson knew how to have fun. It didn't matter what situation you put it in, whether it was serious or casual, he would do something, and it would definitely make us all laugh. And one of those stories, I think it was the Year 9 second res, so that was the latter half of the year. We'd gone to camp and we'd gone in on the buses towards late at night, and the camp counselors were giving us this talk. They were like, all the usual rules, don't stay out at night, don't go in the girls' cabin, so on and so forth. And then there was one rule that stuck out to all members of our group. They said, you're only allowed to take one bread roll, only one. And I can't remember who said it first. I don't even know if anyone said it first. We all just looked at each other and then looked over at the bread rolls. And we did not take one. There was this talk afterwards, and all of us were pregnant with bread rolls in bags or underclothes. And every dinner, we'd grab bread rolls, we'd take them out. We had this drawer in one of the cabins. You'd open up the drawer, and there's just bread rolls everywhere. This also extended as well to stealing the butter, these little sachets of butter. We'd steal them, we put them in the fridge. And it was quite funny, we all laughed, but every action has consequences. And Jackson's poor bag that he used for that residential, he left some butter sachets just in the bottom of the bag and didn't find out about the butter sachets until a month later when they had fully integrated themselves into the fabric. That bag was rancid. You could not go near that bag. We called it the butter bag, and it was, I don't know why, but he kept it. I know he kept it because 2 years later, year 12, he comes up to me and he says, Devlin, and he shows me the bag. It's finally stopped smelling. There was that much butter, and it just... I'm going to miss him so much, more than I can say. But I'm always going to remember all the fun times I had, and all the laughter, and all the fun times, yeah. Just...
If there's one thing I learned from Jackson, it's that it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. You're right. I've never met a more argumentative and headstrong person in my entire life. If anyone could argue someone into believing their point, it was definitely Jackson. I think that's how we, as the Aurora group, got away with so many things. It really is a surprise that our science prac teacher for Aurora, Miss Mills, didn't kill us before we got to the end of year 10. I'm sure when she took on the role as supervising the 4 students in the school, which are part of a virtual selective school, she thought they must be excellently behaved since they're such smart kids. Jackson was determined to prove her wrong. I think it's quite possible he was allergic to being on task. And it wasn't just with our science pracs. In year 10, a small group of us, including a few of us up here, went all the way to Armidale to attend a decathlon. I distinctly remember when we walked into the hall and every other student there was from a private school. All the kids were wearing their blazers, ties, and we were here with polo shirts, jeans, and football shorts. Further to that, our table was definitely the loudest and most disruptive one in the entire hall. We were destroying everything they put on our table like toddlers. I think that's the day I learned what the difference between public and private school kids really is. Our fun definitely didn't end in that hall though. Afterwards, we went out to some fancy Indian restaurant to celebrate, and Jackson set a napkin on fire before the food even came. Then, on the walk back to our cabins, he convinced me to make a small change to the Persian rugs advertisement, and I think you can guess what they were selling now. I can't tell you how long the group of us spent when we were back at the cabin just talking while Jackson decided the best way to pass time was to throw his socks at the fan. Jackson and I had already been pretty close before this trip, but something really solidified for me in that time, as I'm sure it did for others in that group. I have only happy memories from that time, which I can never erase from my mind. I could go on about so many things Jackson did which lit up every single day I got to see him. He cracked so many jokes about my car that every time I get in now, I have something to smile about. After starting Aurora, there was hardly a day at school that I didn't see him, and he never failed to bring something good to every single one of those days. Jackson is a friend that I will always carry close to my heart. Even though I never thought I'd be moving forward without him, I can promise you that every step I take will be to make him proud.
Good afternoon. I first just want to begin by thanking everyone for their attendance today. It truly means a lot to us, and I'm sure it means a lot to Winter's family as well. There are no words that could describe Jackson. None would do him justice. His presence was always known, lively, loving, and inspiring. The impact Jackson had on so many lives was truly admirable, blessing everyone with a smile and a laugh, regardless of how hard times may have been. We want to take this opportunity, myself, George, Ganor, and Josh, to celebrate Jackson's life and share with you a little bit of his legacy and a few untold tales of triumph. These stories are the raunchy tales of a true ADFA legend who touched so many hearts, so I hope you enjoy. The Mooseheads speedrun record. An undoubtable fact about Jackson was that he had the most atrocious yet successful game I'd ever met. To attribute to his status, Jackson set and still holds the Mooseheads pickup speedrun. I can still recall climbing the stairs, prepping myself to embark on an arduous Moose Rage journey. After reaching the top of the stairs, I ducked into the bathroom, where he strutted out into the middle of the dance floor. A small time had passed, and I set out to search for him, only to catch him on his way out with a girl in his arms. He ran up to me, grinning ear to ear with that iconic, obnoxious grin, and hugged me, then began to scream in my ear that he was off to UC for a great night. With a final slap in my ass, he took off into the night. It was a mere 4 minutes and 15 seconds he'd spent in Moose that night. Never had I felt so outdone, yet so proud. All I could do was stand there in awe, my jaw to the floor. Our dinner dates. My most treasured memory would have to be our takeaway dinner dates. What should have been a relaxing break from campus life and a quiet night drive was beyond impossible for anyone who got to ride in Jackson's Outback. Cruising around the streets of Canberra, and always abiding by the speed limits, of course, we'd send off into the night in search for food, often always finding respite at Domino's Pizza. Through our journeys, we committed horrendous actions, chopping every other car on the road and abusing the ears of all the pedestrians we screamed past, blowing Walking on a Dream by Empire of the Sun at max volume. Our singing was no better, often causing all the neighbouring drivers who stopped at the red lights with us to wind up their windows and show us looks of disgust. But I look back on that memory with the most fondness in my heart because it was the time I got to truly spend with Jackson, just us alone, two lads in a car, singing with no shame. This is my most treasured memory. And whether it was smuggling me into my room to hide from any of the staff or suffering consequences of excessive alcohol consumption, temporarily losing his first place spot in our F1 racing competition, or when I purposely creased all his uniforms for the hell of it, Jackson always had a smile on his face. He always made you feel welcome. He always made you feel like you belonged. And for that I thank him, and I take pride that I had the opportunity to spend so much time with him. I will love you, mate, now and forever. Your presence is truly missed, and I just wish you could be here to share one more laugh with me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gunor, better known as Sibia. Winter and I both enlisted on the same day, the 4th of February, 10 days after everyone else, because we both had COVID. The first time we ever met was in the Academy Cadets Mess in suit and tie whilst we rummaged through boxes of green shirts and PT shorts looking for our right size. Once we found the right size, I asked him, "Did you get COVID too?" To which he replied with that bold Jackson grin on his face, "Yes." From then on, it was the beginning of a great friendship, filled with making each other laugh in lectures, hourly stops at Afghans for iced coffee, and filming me sleeping in lectures. One of the funniest moments that some of the boys at 18 Div and I shared with Winter was when we got kicked out of the Rock pub. About half a dozen of us sat around this table with drinks, although Jackson's eyes caught onto this half-finished beer just sitting there, and to the side of it were 2 salt and pepper shakers. I don't know why, but I'm glad that his bright mind thought it'd be funny to take the lids off both shakers and pour the entirety of the shakers into the half-finished beer. Jackson had just created a new drink, to which a drunk trainee officer saw it fit to drink the mystery potion. He drank less than half of it before he coughed out clouds of salt and pepper. Although this wasn't the end of torturing the beer, another clever trainee officer eyed a bottle of Heinz barbecue sauce as he violently reached for it, immediately grabbing it and flooding the salt and pepper beer with barbecue sauce until it was on the verge of overflowing, and the whole table was in tears of laughter. But to make it funnier, another trainee officer, whose name I must not mention, held a coaster in his left hand and sauce in his right, then squeezed it all over the coaster and slapped it on the table, to which barbecue sauce went everywhere. Then Jackson chose to squeeze the remaining sauce all over the table. It was a complete mess. The whole table was covered in splotches of barbecue sauce and bordered by trainee officers bursting out in laughter. Unfortunately, it was the end of a great night because the security guard had caught on and escorted all of us to the exit. So, thank you, Windsor, for leaving behind such great moments. We miss you. Godspeed, brother.
Hi, so I've lived with Jackson for the better part of this year, and I can say that having lived with him, there is never a dull day while you're with him. Just a few weeks ago, Harry and I, who are his roommates, were sitting in a room having a quiet conversation, and in comes Jackson, bursting through the door, slamming the door against the wall, and impromptu just explaining exactly why he does not need a new PC or a new computer all the reasons why it's a bad idea, a waste of time, waste of money. And I kid you not, within 60 seconds of him having that conversation with us, he pulled out his phone and saw an ad for a new PC. And genuinely, within 2 hours, he had been out to that man's house and brought back home a brand new PC, somehow convincing me to buy one with him. Yeah, a classic moment with Jackson living in the Lions was having the online lectures in our rooms with one of the more senior officers walking through the blocks, accompanied by a sergeant. She knocked on our hallway to let us know that she was coming in, and Jackson, having not looked up from his lecture, in a classic loud, booming Jackson voice, yelled out, "Yo!" Which was greeted with a very stern, "That's ma'am to you." It caused such a commotion that the other hallways heard it and all came in to see what was going on. And that became a very classic Jackson story. It can't go without mention that, of course, Jack was quite a ladies' man at times. It was on one of our trips to dinner where he'd somehow convince you that you're hungry enough for a second one, that he downloaded Tinder. And after just 2 months of using that app, he put us all to shame. He made it look so easy that it genuinely gave some of us hope. By far my favourite memories with Jack were just the day-to-day, walking past his door at 10:30 at night and he'd be sitting there drinking from a 2-litre carton of iced coffee right before bed. Or just having him walk in with a cheeky grin on his face, telling you that it's cake time. Yeah, I've never had someone convince me that I'm hungry. But yeah, Jack, you're a larger-than-life figure, and I will truly miss you.
In Jackson's memory, our brazen brother-in-arms, and the beating heart of Echo 18, I wrote a poem that I'd like to share with you all today. This day, we lay Jackson down to eternal rest. Needless to say, God only takes the best. What a life he led, one of great passion and soul, up until that tragic day not too long ago. Since then, the best of memories come to mind. King of Gran Turismo on the track, he really left us all behind. A tactile bloke, you always knew he was there. Bum slaps were his thing, but it was his hugs that could not compare. A talented lad, a sportsman, and he also had the smarts, but his true talent was winning those Tinder hearts. A serious situation, there was none, because when winter was around, it was just all too fun. He was a bold, charismatic, and cheeky character. No wonder he was truly loved. So I ask you all now, he's dearly beloved. Go on in his memory and live life hard. Jacko, please know the time we spent together was sublime. As I say a final goodbye, just know you can be my wingman anytime. Fly high, brother. I love you.
First of all, I'd just like to thank everyone for the amounts of support that's been shown over the past 2 weeks. From, going to the pub with the boys in Div 18, to the messages from everyone, the support from the Narra High teachers, all of it counts, goes a long way. This is messed up. No other way of putting it. Really never thought I'd have to give this speech, ever. I saw a side of Jackson I believe no one else got to experience, the big brother experience. He was loving, but he was very harsh. Taught me lots of lessons throughout his life. We were brothers, of course, so it means there was plenty of arguments over the years, just silly, stupid stuff. But as years went on, grew as siblings and moved past the stupid stuff and became genuinely good friends, got along so well. towards the end, I got him into surfing, which was always a fun time. He never managed to stand up for more than 4 seconds, but he was so determined. When he went to ADVA, he'd come down every 2 to 3 weekends, and every Sunday we'd hit up a surf, and he would try every day to stand up, just couldn't do it. Surfing was fun and all, but the main reason I went out was just to go on the car rides with him, get the free Macca's. He'd always shout me on his ADVA money, and it's pretty good. Something that always bothered me was the fact that everything I did, he ended up doing better other than surfing, obviously, but every school report I brought home, Mum always say, Jackson was getting A's, he was coming second, he was doing better than you. Oh, I was so sick of it. Like, when I started footy, everyone knew me as Jacko's brother. Defence application, Jacko's brother, everything, my whole life. I always thought this was a bad thing, as I wanted to be known, just for me, not Jackson's brother for once. But looking back on it all, it's such a good thing. Like, all the positive impacts he had on people has really shown over the years, and being the follow-up person of him really means a lot, goes a long way. As I go throughout the rest of my life, I plan to carry through Jackson's legacy and reflect his generous, positive mindset into my everyday life. I wish one day to have positively affected as many people as he did. It's an extremely unsettling feeling without having him anymore, but nothing we can do will bring him back. It's the worst feeling, but it's just what happens. And if there's anything that people can take from Jackson, it's his live every day like it's his last attitude. Never wasted a day lying in bed. Instead, he'd be keen for a kayak, a surf, like anything. He used to go to Coolangatta Lookout to watch the sunset. Just anything other than just wasting a day. I believe everyone would benefit by taking this attitude from Jackson and applying it every single day, as you never know when it can be your last. I'll miss you.
For Jeff and Natalie, we want to thank each and every person who has reached out to us, phoned, called, visited, messaged, hugged, cried, sent flowers, bought food, most importantly, dropped in gin and beer. As we said, the conversations were awkward, the tears were random, the hugs were heartwarming. We've had literally hundreds of messages of support, and we hope to get to them in the coming weeks when time permits. We wanted you to know we received them, and we were both grateful and humbled by the outpouring of love. Jacko was larger than life in every area. He was not only a big unit, he was also exceptionally loud and full of laughter. Those that have been to our home know it's not a huge house, but we would often sit in the lounge room and unable to hear the TV due to Jack yelling in his room with his noise-cancelling headphones, cancelling for him but suffering for the rest of the house. Some 4 rooms down while screaming at his mates across the state over some game. We would go into his room, flick the lights to get his attention, ask him to pipe down, and the reply was always the same. What? If it's too loud, close the door. We were like, dude, it is closed. We have been complimented so much on what a wonderful job we did raising him and the man he turned out to be. While yes, we may have laid the foundation, it really does take a village and so many people who had an influence on him. To his school teachers, you are the people who took what he did and gave him the wings to fly. That was evidence that we were looking at planning today. Over 25 teachers from 3 schools reached out to come and pay tribute. To his primary school here of their choice, remembering so well after having so many students after Jack, shows the impact he had on people from a young age. The teacher at the end of his education got to know the real clown, with a big infectious laugh, who always led the charge of anything that really wasn't allowed. He definitely left a mark on all of you. We do want to take a special moment to thank you for his educators, to the staff and management behind Aurora College. Thank you for seeing that not all gifted children had access to selective high school or wanted to travel long distances every day. Thank you for taking the initiative to have a handful of state's finest and give them the tools to learn an environment that they felt comfortable. He loved swimming in his special pond of equally special people who thought like he did, differently. He always commented that he didn't think like normal people, and Aurora made him feel normal. Having said that, there was the time we questioned what type of teaching you did there, and that was when Natalie was doing volunteer mentoring for Jack's year group. In that group, there were a number of friends, most of them here today, and we would have long conversations, completely off script from what she was supposed to discuss on the task sheet. The group was great, and everyone got a lot out of it, and we look forward to each week to catch up. On one of the many car conversations, and we had a lot, Jack was telling me how his mates really enjoyed their sessions with me and how the one he was in was a real drag and he couldn't wait for them to be over. His next words were that he couldn't believe how lucky his mates were that they had me as their mentor. How he wished he was in that group being mentored by me would have been really cool. My reply was, well, lucky you have me for the other 23 hours of the day. Now, while we all agree it's not nice to play favourites, we did have a teacher that made a profound impact on him that we wanted to say thank you to, ironically in a subject that he hated, Ms Elliott from Aurora English, who is here today with us. We wanted you to know how much you impacted his life and had him think about things differently. Those that really knew Jack, that with him there was black and a white, and absolutely no inkling of grey, unless it was scientifically proven that grey really did exist. Even then, it would be exactly what shade of grey was acceptable, and he needed to see the science behind it before he even considered thinking about changing his view. We don't know what you did or how you did it, but kudos to you for having him change his mind on anything, let alone English. Just so you know, he had you lined up to talk about one of his people who inspired him, which he knew would be asked for an offer for his officers' selection board. You were right up there with the race car driver. That was pretty high praise, we reckon. The other person who undoubtedly changed his life and ours was an unknown person who generously gave so much of himself to check in on Jack at Nowra High, and was someone he could talk to about the growing up blues, life in general. Owen, thank you. That doesn't seem to be enough words. To have someone on hand that thought like he did, give him the reassurance that he wasn't weird, was in fact very normal, and definitely not alone in the way he thought things through. You have a true gift and have chosen the right field to be in. Keep changing lives one dinosaur at a time. Just going back to that scientific side of Jack, he was what he liked to call himself, a man of science and theory. If he didn't get proof, he really thought everyone was a bunch of idiots, as science said so. On one of his many trips home on the weekends, the benefit of being close in Canberra, he was telling us about the main issue living in ADFA with such close quarters. They had 4 rooms to the half div. Those 4 rooms shared a bathroom. You can see where this is heading. The bathroom was no ventilation, so the smell of 4 grown men was a little bit hard to bear at times. We had a joke and said that there was a spray that we told him about on the TV ad called VI Poo. Well, the discussion that followed, how can that even be possible? How did they have spray matter that could have variations in splash patterns and size? How did the fragrance stay yet trap the smell and the specimen didn't escape? So many questions. He even said, "Nope, I'm sorry, it's just not possible." The next trip, we said, "How's the smell going?" But he didn't want us to buy him a bottle, and he was adamant that he did not want it because it was a hoax, a money grab, and really, don't be stupid. Before his next visit, I found some in the store and put it next to his desk when he arrived. There was no discussion, and I thought he would leave it but being the curious brain that he was, he did quietly take the bottle home. The next visit in general conversations, we heard words that we never thought we would hear out of Jacko's mouth. "Oh, by the way, I have to say that I've never been more wrong in my life about something. I don't know how they did it, but that VI Poo is amazing. It really works, and even on Sibia. It's changed the whole dorm, and guess what? Apparently my shit did stink." Such a way with words, this fella. Jacko was one of those kids that was really useful to have around. When in doubt, we would always dispatch Jacko. When you needed furniture moved, dispatch Jacko. When you needed cheese and wine brought to the winery, dispatch Jacko. When you needed a male model for work videos, hair models for TAFE to learn on, or models for photography work, Dispatch Jacko. Even how he ended up in AFL was a really Dispatch Jacko moment. Let's preface this story by saying up until this point he had never picked up an AFL ball or tackled a person. It just wasn't his nature, especially coming from soccer. A note came home from school saying that the GWS Giants were coming to test the PE class for data gathering information on youth and athletic ability. Of course, as usual, we were happy to dispatch Jacko and his body to assist data gathering. When we hopped in the car that afternoon, I asked him how it went. Not thinking much, his reply was, "Oh, it was okay. I made it to the next round." I gave him a weird look and asked, "What round?" He said, "I don't know. I've been invited to the GWS training facility." So we thought not a lot of it, with no idea what was going on, and a few weeks later we toddled up to GWS. We got there to a lock gate, couldn't get in the door, and no one was around. We pushed the button, someone comes in and walks us into the rooms, briefing, where there are a very small handful of kids and parents, with really no idea what was going on, except this is pretty cool to be sitting where we are. Once everyone arrived, the development manager of the Giants stood up and said, and I remember to this day, "We travelled the state testing 3,000 students to find the perfect athlete. I've been waiting for a year to be here today. Thank you all for coming." Jack was one of 13 out of 3,000 to fit their perfect athlete profile, and they wanted to see if they could take an athlete and turn them into an AFL player. Well, those of you that know him and watched him play, I think they can safely agree that they could. Jack was sent to his local Boundary Tigers to learn out how to play from scratch. Rocked up to the under-15 team. Having never tackled in his life, we all knew he could kick for years as his soccer ball was punching holes in the nets at home. He went to a few training sessions, came home and said it looks like an okay game and he would like to see how good the kids that would be playing against are so he could decide if it was for him. There was a selection day in Batemans Bay and he suggested we go and have a look. At this time, he really wasn't interested in the sport, so off we trekked to Batemans Bay for yet another car trip. Parents and parents-to-be, if you ever want to get anything through to your kids, car conversation, captive audience, non-confrontational, and you can pick the timing. Jacko was very much shaped on car convos, as we had a lot of them, although they are not fun through the Rubik's Cube stage of one's life. 6 hours of the cube turning is enough to get on anyone's nerves. Anyway, back to the story. He thought he would have a run on the field and see how the game felt. Come home, have a think. Not being AFL, nor being ever played the game, we realised he had no idea what the positions were. So out comes the phone and onto Google. Google, he goes, AFL positions. Sees one that has an emoji of a dog showing where it stands, and he said, "Oh, it requires a lot of running." So he had picked Ruck Rover. Rover being the dog, I'd say. We pick up to an absolute packed car park, and then Jack went into full panic and meltdown that there was no way in the world he was getting out of the car, let alone onto the field. Whose stupid idea was this, he said. "I'm going home." I'm like, "You dragged my butt down here for 2 hours. It was a stupid idea, but you will get out of the car." A few choice words later, he got out of the car. Put his boots on and stood on the field. He knew not a soul. I urged him to go and kick with the ball with a group of boys. He walked over, they walked off. And there he was on his own again. When they gathered to talk, he gets put in a group and they ask what position he plays. "Ruck Rover," he says. So they set him up in the middle and blow the whistle. I was surprised that he played okay, but from what I did know, we are from soccer. At the end, they gathered the 60 kids, said to thanks everyone. While most make the team, although most won't make the team, everybody just keep playing. And there was Jacko sitting on his own when he was called on the second name of the squad to go to the state AFL. I think both of us were quite speechless on the way home, which was a first. Then we realised we had just started a new sport. The kids he didn't know, and he had to tell his coach, who I'd never met, that he is now playing state AFL. Words to D on that day were something like the lines of, "Hi, we need help. Can you teach him to play in 6 weeks?" Year 1 of AFL, it was a great year. We always knew where our boy was. He was the lost dude that really just ran around aimlessly with absolutely no idea where he needed to be or what to do. Lots of tackles where he missed the person completely and hit the ground. It was quite entertaining to watch. We were very good at lying at the end of the game when asked if he played okay. Year 2, his body started to change and he beefed up. Must have been that continuous 6 litres of milk we had to have in the fridge at any one time. He was taken into the GWS development side and was sent up to Sydney for a friendly for the coaches to see their squads and how they were going and identify the next round of kids. Jack rocked up with a blank look from a lot of them as they thought, who the heck are you? That day was interesting to say the least. Jack sometimes got a little confused between soccer that he knew and AFL who's still learning. That was evident when the other side was kicking in from behind the post and Jacko decided at that point he was apparently playing soccer. He ran up to the person with the ball like you do when someone is throwing in and was waving arms all over the place. Yes, he got a 50-metre penalty. And the entire stadium of high-achieving parents were booing him with calls of, "What are you doing, you idiot? Who the heck is this kid?" We can confirm that it is possible to slink right down in your seat, that your cap's pulled over your head. It does block out visual view of the public, at least in your heads anyway. Having said that, he then scored 3 goals in a row, getting past the best they had and winning them the game. Due to numbers, we had to move clubs to Wollongong the following year and then was able to return to Bomaderry for his final year under 17s. We have no idea how he managed it, but convinced Charlie to join the team for the year. Charlie had never played AFL either, and he was just recovering from not 1 broken arm, but 2 broken arms at the same time. We had concerns that he would get crushed and asked Jack to protect him on the field. The reply came back that he doesn't need help, he will be fine, and a good crush will be good for his character building. So to the first game. Chuck's on the back of the left side, Jacko's in the middle of the right wing. The first kid to tackle Charlie gave it to him pretty hard, and Chuck went down. We were cringing, hoping that it would be okay, and the next second there was this white flash that crossed the field in a blink. The next minute, the boy who had tackled Charlie was picked up with 2 hands by his shirt and flung literally into the air a few metres away, landing on the ground like a rag doll. He had no idea how he got there. Jack extended his hand out to help Charlie up, gave him a slap on the back, said keep going, then walk back to the other side. From then on, we knew he would always be there for him no matter what. The team went on to win the comp from the underdog position, and Jack was so happy to have Charlie as part of his team and his passion. The grand final, without question, was the best game we had attended for either boys in their sporting careers. We have said through this whole process that Jack lived life to the fullest with no regrets. Our one and only regret is it didn't come across AFL much earlier, as the mateship from the team and the friendship from the club, who opened their arms to us all when we first arrived, was outstanding. We thank you all for that and being a positive part of our lives that we will cherish. To the Bomber boys here today, because of your friendship, spirit and patience while he fumbled his way through, Jacko had joined the ad for Rams and was hoping to start playing soon after the excessive workload of study that he had on hold. It would have been great to see how he went with that. As some of you know from his social pages, Jack enjoyed nature and photography. He was an adventurer, and his whole life he wanted to do was travel around the world, living on the teenage budget of $0. That then turned into discovering his backyard. It wasn't unusual to see reels of images of forest, cliff tops and beaches, all with his car in it. Most young men would be posting photos of girls and parties, but not Jacko. It was all about the beloved Subaru Outback. We had photos of the car in the beach with multiple angles at sunrise. We had the car on the beach at sunset. We had the car on a cliff top with the awning out. We had the car in the forest. We had the car in the car wash. We even had the car in the Bunnings car park. Because some group called Subarus in Bunnings had a car park. He loved that car. There was another love of Jacko's, and it was his trusty roll of duct tape. We heard a little bit about the duct tape before, but if you saw my big fat Greek wedding with the Windex, well, duct tape was Jacko's Windex. So imagine his delight when he got to combine his love for his car and the duct tape at the same time. After one of his adventures had the front of the Subaru hanging off, and he was able to duct tape it on and drive a few hours home. Jack had duct tape everywhere. Whenever something needed fixing, he was there with his trusty roll. After today, we urge you all to go and buy a roll and put it in your glove box as a reminder of Jack, and when you do pull it out to get you out of a bind, you can let him know he was right. He would like that. We have decided to never sell the Subi, so we'll be seeing a buzzing around town with one of the 3 of us in it there. I think depending on the speed, you'll get an idea as who was driving at the time. We could tell a million stories about Jack, as I'm sure everyone could. However, we'll leave you to discover them for yourself over time, as he's not forgotten. What has happened to Jack is nothing short of tragic, and actually, to use Charlie's words, you talk too much. It's just words and it's just shit. True Chuck. We hold no anger in any of this, and if anything, are so grateful that with the friends and time and left this world with a true friend by his side and not a stranger with him. This event has impacted so many people and put us all on a different path, and we will navigate our way crossing over from time to time to check in on each other. As we said on our social post, once we walk out of these doors, it's time to live. See us not as poor people that you are sorry for, more so how lucky you are, family, to have been such part of fulfilled life. We are far from poor, and in fact very rich with closeness and memories which we'll enjoy for the years to come. To Fiona, Tom, Jack and Sophie, we are two families who will be bound together forever, who are both in a situation that neither of us would have wished for. May we draw strength from each other in the years to come and great support going forward. To James, Jack, Alex, your words have rocked. And we know we would have been so grateful to have you all there, and it was brought so much comfort. He was with really great mates who we felt like we knew, as he talked so much about you all the time. To Half-Deb, Seb, George and Harry, he loved you boys so much. He talked about you all the time that we felt like we already knew you way before we met you. You gave him that drive to get up each day and infect others with his passion and motivation in life. Thank you for being there for him. Pink sheets, Batman costumes, practical jokes and all. I do wonder which of you drew the short straw to do his laundry that last time. My money's on Seb. To Div 18, we have no words for what you are going through. Jack told us he got so much strength from all of you after the other loss. In fact, that loss brought you all so much closer. We hope in time you will smile when you remember him, and pretty sure each and every one of us will have a Remember Jacko moment. A story that will include his deep, contagious laugh, especially after he had pranked someone. We can't thank you all enough for Thursday night, and we are true to our word that our home and phones are open to each and every one of you. If you need a hug, need a laugh, need a kick up the butt, or mentors in your military life, let Jack leave you with that legacy, and you will always be family. To have a night of normality, to talk, laugh and enjoy each other was exactly what we all needed as we left. We left with such calmness instead of grief, which was really refreshing. Having said that, Charlie probably could have done without the excessive amount of you-know-what, but let's say for the first time at a bar, he now has an added motivation to join and study hard. Apparently he owes someone 2 drinks in 2024. We did tell him yesterday, though, that he had a very good time the night before. Maybe he couldn't remember. Thank you, Matt, for everything you have done for us as a family, and Jack as well. You might like to know that Jackson found you, to use his exact words, firm but fair. However, he said you were easy living with compared to Nat. And we will let you in on a little secret, Div 18. Captain Hunt is a big softy underneath. Keep that in mind at minus 5 degrees in the morning, at 6 a.m. when he's yelling out to you to do push-ups in the frost. To the command and staff at Advert, Defence and Fleet Air Arm, your kindness, patience and empathy have given us great comfort. Thank you for reminding us what a wonderful family we're all part of and looking after us and our boy Jack so well. To Kylie, who I have now dubbed the Super PA, thank you. You literally took over and did everything we didn't have the strength to do or face. And for that, we will be forever grateful. Welcome to week 2 of a new posting, and your training next week should be interesting. You might be able to train them. To our presenters today, thank you. It was a hard call when I asked each of you to say a few words, and we appreciate you standing up where we couldn't. We wanted to turn the traditional funeral on its head. It's a celebration, an effect of the 18th birthday party you never got to have due to COVID. I think it's safe to say we have all but seen a pattern of Jacko over his lifespan. You can see how it turned into the lovable, line-pushing, huggable and inspiring lad he was. With Jack's love for the sea and the happiness the three boys shared on their kayaks, we thought it fitting to have him cremated, where he will then kayak out to his favourite hidden beach in one of the many places they had discovered together to lay him to rest. This way he is with each and every one of you, wherever you may go in the world. When you are near the water, close your eyes, take a deep breath, feel him around you, hear him, that big laugh he had. If you're in the water, swim with him. If you're out at sea, smile at him. And if you are kayaking, paddle with him. We will drop a pin for those who need to be close to him when we have set him free. To Jacko, we don't need to stand up here and declare our love to you. That much has always been clear. Our lives were shattered with one tiny phone call. We will now have to find our way through life without our little elephant crashing through the house with the big hugging arms and super loud voice. Charlie will now have to be the big family hugger, and he is in training. As you will be aware, that's a work in progress. We were so excited for you with the plans to change to the Navy, which had started, so you could have come home and grew up in the life you had, the very life you watched your dad live. We hope you are super proud of the outpouring of love and the beautiful location of your celebration of life. Having said that, we know how much you wanted to be at HMS Creswell, and really, there could have been a better way to get in this. We always told our boys to get one shot at today, make it count. Give whatever you do 300%. Leave not one regret. I think it's safe to say you did that, and you listened to your parents, at least this time. Thank you for choosing us to be your family, Jacko. We love you, kiddo. Dharma and Char. Thank you. We'd just like to invite Jack's mate Ari and his mum Jo to play a song chosen by Ari called 1000 Years. Thank you.
What an incredible time we have shared here this afternoon, and I think we can all agree with each other that Jackson lived every single day, every moment to its fullest. And we thank you all for sharing him with us. The family have also asked that you help them preserve the memories of Jackson and use the hashtag #JacksonWinterMemories on all the social posts that you might put up and all the photos that you post as well. And if you have already posted on social media before today, please take a minute just to edit that post and add that hashtag, because this is where the family are going to go in all the days and years ahead to go for those wonderful memories, those fond memories of him. And it really is important to the family. This concludes our time here, and the family now invite you to join them on the quarterdeck to mingle prior to heading up to the Warrant Officers Senior Sailors Mess. There will be light refreshments, and importantly, the bar will be open for purchases, giving you a chance to raise a toast to Jackson. We have 2 exits here in this hall, the glass doors, so you are welcome to say your last goodbye on the way out and leave something on his casket if you so choose. Thank you all.
Look at the stars, look how they shine for you. And everything you do, yeah, they were all yellow. I came along, I wrote a song for you. And all the things you do, was called yellow. So then I took my turn. Oh, what a thing to have done. And it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin and bones turn into something beautiful. And you know I love you so. You know I love you so. I swam across, I jumped across for you. Oh, what a thing to do. 'Cause you were all yellow. I drew a line, I drew a line for you. Oh, what a thing to do. And it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin and bones turn into something beautiful. And you know, for you I bleed myself dry. For you I bleed myself dry. they shine for you. Look how 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 they shine. Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you. And all the things that you